Ну что, коллеги, предлагаю стартовать 11:10. Сегодняшним нашим докладчиком будет Бартош Крынский, это инженер CyberArk. Он нам сегодня расскажет об этом новом решении. Бартош, okay, it's your turn. You can start, please.
Sure. Can you just confirm if you are able to hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Looks like everything is fine.
Okay, are you able to see my screen also?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Bravo. Okay, thank you very much, Alex, for the introduction. Let's start then. Hello, everybody. My name is Bartek Kryński. I'm the pre-sales team leader in CyberArk. So let me follow it with English, as it is still better than Ukrainian and Russian. So I'll do my best to do it quickly, but I hope effectively also. Today we would like to cover the topic of remote vendor access. Really hot topic nowadays. We are after many discussions with customers, with partners, with prospects, and believe me, it's the time where during the meeting, during the workshop, during the webinar, there is no such meeting, like no questions, no interest in the solution. So I think it's the great time to start the discussion with prospects, with customers, about how we can cover the remote vendor access effectively with our newest, the new solution which we released 3 months ago, which is called CyberArk Alero. Today, what I would like to do, first to do for you the short presentation, technical presentation about the solution. Why do we need it? So what are the requirements? What is the current situation on the customer and the prospect side to use something new, not only VPNs, jump servers, etc., but something new, more sophisticated for remote access. I will cover also the short demo. So I will show to you how to present to customers the demo environment. And also in the end, I would like to cover the best practices part, how to do the presentations. I will discuss the POC scope because it's also very interesting nowadays, and we will leave some time frame for the QA session in the end. So let's start then with the first part with the presentation. I will just check if I'm able to switch the slides. Yep, perfect. So let's set the stage first. So we are going to introduce the setting that remote vendors exist basically and discuss some of the problems that organizations face in trying to secure this remote access. So first of all, there are many, in most cases, I don't see environments on customer sites who would say, no, we are not allowing remote vendors to get into the environment. In many cases, there is a lot of such access, the remote vendor access to the critical systems in IT world, but also in OT, in industrial environments like ICS, SCADA, to capitalize the core competencies of the company, to improve some operational efficiencies. There are a lot of requirements basically to access the office part, like some databases, domain controllers, or also the industrial systems. But in the same time, if we cover a lot of external access for privileged access from third party, in most cases, currently, it's really unsecured. We'll explain it later on. But first of all, it's very difficult to track. I see it many times that customer would really like to have the accountability to get the information, not only which vendor access their environment, but also what person from this vendor access the environment. Because in most cases, if we have, for instance, some VPNs establishing some virtual private networks through which person is establishing the session to, then in many cases, we create some shared account. In many cases, we define some shared passwords and provide it to the vendor, and then we are not sure who is really accessing our environment. Third point is related to the dynamic environments nowadays. What is it about? I think you will agree with me that the common practice for getting access with a third party, first of all, is using client-side VPN or site-to-site VPN to encrypt traffic through the internet. Then, in some cases, that's it basically. So no accountability, no security, just encryption, but we are not able to define the granular policies of what environment will be accessed. And additionally, if there is a malware on the station of the third-party vendor, then this malware can propagate in the environment. Because of that, if prospect or customer do not have the CyberArk Core PAS solution, in many cases they try to use some workarounds, I would say, like the jump server approach. So you have some jump station, you need to log into this jump station, and from the jump station log into the environment. Maybe there is something more sophisticated with the approach like the VDI, like Citrix, VMware, etc., to use this VDI for this purpose. But generally speaking, what we do see is that there are two types of remote vendors. There are some remote vendors who set up the agreement for the long time. Like we are the reseller or vendor, and we have some maintenance for 3 years. So then it's a little bit easier to set up the secured connection with some multi-factor authentication purpose, this jump server, VDI, so on. It's very expensive, also very expensive from the management point of view, but it's more secure. But also, there are some remote accesses from the remote vendors, like immediate. There is some critical situation, and we need to give an access for the new employee from the third-party vendor, and we need to do it in the minutes, because, I don't know, there is some issue, something is wrong, someone needs to react quickly. And then what we usually do, we define some access rules on the firewall or the VPN concentrator. But usually, if someone needs to do something at night, we will define additional rules like ACLs to say, do not wake me up during the night. I will put some additional, let's say, network, like the subnet. Okay, you can have an access to the subnet, like 24-bit subnets, just to not wake me up during the night. So the security here is not the first priority. Last but not least, the user registration may take a long time. Why? Because we have a lot of systems where we need to provision this user. Like Active Directory is the first step. We need to ask the IT guys to create a new user, define the proper permissions assigned to the proper groups. Then we are going to VPN, define the same user in the VPN, provide the agent, VPN agent, or some hardware if it's the site-to-site VPN. Maybe we need to create a new user on the jump server or the VDI. It's around days or even weeks to wait for such approvals from different sites. And additionally, one more hard point, also not from the customer side, but also from the partner side, is that if we are using some VPN clients, I heard a lot of times, it is confusing also for partner if they have, or you have many customers and every customer is having different policy, different version of the agent, different agents. You maybe have some uploader or some better solution like CyberArk Endpoint Privilege Manager to protect against some untrusted applications, to elevate permissions. Then maybe you don't have the permissions to install some exotic VPN client. Maybe not something known which we may trust, but something newer, different version, etc. So also from partner side, it may take a lot of time to wait for the approval from security team to install the application. Also, if customer wouldn't have any security other than the VPN, so if we establish the session with the VPN, and if there is some hacker who would potentially compromise the secret, where if we were in the hurry, so we needed to set up the environment quickly. So in most cases, what I do see in the real life is the second factor of authentication is later on, let's say. For now, shared password is the only one secret which we may use because it needs to be provided quickly, like the LDAP password. So then it means that if hacker compromise the endpoint of the user or just the secret of this VPN client, hacker is having the access to the same elements in the infrastructure first-party vendor had before. So it's risky. Additionally, if we are talking not only about the prospect, but about the customer of CyberArk, customer of CyberArk already have the Core PAS environment, it's much easier, yeah, because there is the VPN client to the PVWA. Till now, we highly recommend it to encrypt the tunnel before getting access to PVWA and PSM from the security point of view. So it was easier from the customer perspective because the session needed to be established with the demilitarized zone, decrypted, then we got access to the PVWA, to PSM, and we established some session. But first of all, is again, different layers you need to manage. Yeah, VPN, Core PAS, AD, so on, so on. You need to provide this two-factor authentication to be secure. So maybe it's more secure, but it's really expensive approach. We hear from our customers, it's something like maybe even $2,000 every year per person to cover it. From the RDS perspective, Core PAS license, VPN license, additionally some management, it's a lot of money, yeah, to cover just remote vendor access. To set up the stage properly, just keep in mind that today we are talking not only about not about the contractor, like our employee who is the contractor and he's establishing the session every day, say for 8 hours since 8 a.m. till 4 a.m. It's not this case, I would say. It's the case where really the environment is dynamic and we are talking about the vendors who usually are rotating a lot and it's not so stable, I would say. So just to set up the stage properly, what are today's needs and what would be the best solution? So first of all, today we see a lot of VPNs, a lot of agents, a lot of, let's say, boxes like side-to-side VPNs, and you would like to move to the purpose of having no VPNs, no agents at all. Additionally, we would like to have something definitely better than the shared password, and do not have the need to create the two-factor authentication, which from time to time may be difficult, like how I can quickly provide to my vendor RSA secure ID token, yeah? Or set up for him quickly some authentication to the Duo Mobile, Google Authenticator, etc. Maybe it will generate some delay, some latency. So we'd like to skip it, but no passwords at all from both sides, from the customer side nor from the vendor side. And last but not least, we would like to use the common practice, which we do see a lot nowadays in the current world, which is called JIT, just-in-time access, just-in-time self-provisioning. So these are the three requirements we heard a lot from our customers last years. Being on the customer side with the deployments of Core PAS, it was the complaints we heard a lot from our customers and prospects. So we invented the solution. It's not the acquisition. We created from scratch the solution, which is built by three pillars. First, biometric authentication, nothing else. Very important point from both sides, from the customer side and from the third-party vendor side. You will not see the shared passwords anymore. Never. From the third-party vendor access, remote access. Zero trust access. If we don't have the shared passwords, we protect against the situation where the password will be in unauthorized way shared between employees in the third-party company, or maybe by mistake it will be sent somewhere externally to some other email because of some mistake in typing the email address. And of course, JIT, which should be also there. How it is working, I will describe now the architecture, and then we'll go to the demo. We'll get into the architecture details. So let's assume, doesn't matter if it's the existing customer or we are talking about the new opportunity at the prospect. Let's assume there is or there will be the Core PAS in the environment. It's really needed to have it on-prem, because then we are protecting not only the remote vendor access, but also the internal privilege access. And the idea is as following. We would like to give the secured access from third-party vendor to the Core PAS. But let's define some requirements. First, of course, requirement, as I mentioned, no passwords, securely, quickly, without VPNs, but let's put it even more difficult. We don't want to open the inbound communication from the internet to the even demilitarized zone with the new port like 443 to PVWA. Because, as I mentioned before, by us, it was always highly recommended to put the PVWA in the backend after the VPN. But now we don't want to use the VPN, but we also don't want to open new ports, inbound traffic. That's why we will install in front of the Core PAS, we will install the new solution, which is called the Alero connector. It's the application which is based on the Docker container. Very easy to be installed. Trust me. If you install the Ubuntu, because we should provide it to the Ubuntu 18.04, if you install the operating system from scratch, it's something like less than 1 hour to set up full environment on the customer prospect side for the POC purpose. So we just install with a couple of comments. We just install the Docker. We just download 2 images. I will explain later on the architecture. We run the container, and basically that's it from the installation point of view. Rest is a couple of CLI comments, very easy to be set up. So why do we need this connector? The next service which we should use is the CyberArk Alero cloud service, which is delivered in the AWS infrastructure, also in Europe. It's very easy from the security point of view. I know that in some cases from the customer and prospect side, there is the first point, oh, cloud, thank you very much. No, we cannot use cloud because of the regulation, etc. I would say here, wait, we'll comment it in the end, because actually there are no sensitive data stored in the cloud. There is no proxy which is terminating the first session, establishing the next session. Let's wait with these assumptions. In the end of the session, we will explain the architecture, the encryption layers, so on, so on. So this Alero service is very important because it's really protecting the access to the environment. So the first point is, of course, the remote vendor who would like to have an access to the environment. How it will work. If I am on the customer side, I'm responsible for inviting new vendors. I need to do it immediately. I'm logging in with the browser to the CyberArk Alero service in AWS, which is managed by CyberArk, protected by CyberArk. I'm logging in there with the biometric authentication, and I'm just creating the new user, new vendor invitation. And this invitation will be sent to remote vendor. Remote vendor will receive an email, and after clicking the link, he will get the QR code in the browser. So the browser will be open. We will have the QR code in the browser, and there will be information. Please install the application, the mobile application on your mobile device. So this mobile device may be iOS-based or Android-based. We are installing and registering securely application. I will show you that in a second on the demo, how we may do it. And then after the application is registered, you just run this application, and in the first step, application will scan with the camera the QR code to identify where we would like to have an access. And then we'll authenticate user with the biometric features of the mobile device. It's nothing based on Alero, like we need to send some data to Alero service to be authenticated. It's based on the authentication in the mobile. So face recognition, and fingerprint, etc., is supported on both the Android and the iOS devices. Is the, let's say, more kernel-based than application-based. Then the kernel is sending information to the application that user is authenticated, and then application is sending data to the cloud that this is really the user who should have an access into the environment. Based on that, the browser will establish session with the Alero service. what is really cool and very important here from the security point of view, the browser will establish session with Alero service, but connector is establishing the session with Alero service also. What does it mean? It means that we can use the customer proxy, forward proxy. We are using outbound policy on the firewall, not inbound policy on the firewall. So we need to convince customer to change anything in the demilitarized zone to get inbound traffic available for this particular IP address of Alero connector. I think it's much more secure. There are many questions if we are going to move Alero service to the on-prem environment. No, we don't want to do it because we really believe it's much more secure, easier to manage, and it really makes sense to do it. I think in most cases we can convince customers and prospects to use the service in the cloud because there are no sensitive data stored in it. Let's get into the details later on. And in the end, I will share with you the technical documentation about the encryption layers, but important point here that the tunnel with the PVWA and then with the PSNs is established end-to-end between the user and Alero connector. I think is also valuable here to explain that there is no way that in Alero service there is some person with checking activity during the previous session because it's just too critical. So basically, in the end, the remote vendor will have an access to the portal of CyberArk, which is called PVWA. I'm pretty sure that most of you know it already, so don't want to explain the details, and we will see it also in the demo. And if that third-party vendor will click connect, he will or she will establish the session with the PSM through the HTTPS, also it is really cool. And on the PSM proxy, he will be able to choose any application he needs, like SQL, Management Studio, Toad, FTP client, browser, or whatever, to establish the secure connection with the critical element in the infrastructure. From the security point of view, just to summarize it before the demo, there are no agents and no passwords on the endpoint of the third-party vendor. It's really important from the security point of view and ergonomic point of view. Yeah. No many agents installed on the station, no passwords, no shared passwords. Also on the mobile device, it's just this mobile application which needs to be installed. In most cases, it's much easier to install the application on the mobile than on the laptop, on the device of the user. And with no passwords, just the biometric authentication. The encryption, as I mentioned, is end-to-end. The provisioning, I will show you that in the second on the demo. It takes seconds. It's really simple. It may take seconds, not hours or days. And last but not least, Alero service is protected by CyberArk, and there are only public information in the cloud. What does it mean? If I invite some third-party vendor into the environment, like here, Dima Barboy, I need to put two data of this user. It will be the email address because we will send the invitation to this email address. And we will put here the phone number because the authentication of the mobile device will be based on the phone number. I will explain it also in a second. And that's it. There is nothing else which is stored in this public cloud. I think it's very important. No authentication data, no activity data, which is stored in the cloud. Everything is stored either on the mobile device biometric or in the Core PAS accountability. Let's do the demo then. And then I'll explain the architecture and we'll do the QA session. So let's imagine a situation. We have two players here. I'm the first one. I would like to invite a third-party vendor. And we will have the George, user from vendor Acme, who would like to establish secure session to my, domain controller to change something on it. So first of all, as you see, I'm having an access with the browser to Alero.io, which is the cloud service of Alero, and there was the request to scan the QR code. There was explanation you can download the application from the App Store or from the Google Play, and on the right side you see my mirror of my mobile device, which in this case is some iPhone. So I was authenticated. I scanned the QR code here, and as you see, after being authenticated, I'm redirected into the portal. In the portal, you see different sites. So basically, it may be different environments from the different customers. If they do have, if you have many customers with Alero, for every site, you see the connector, which is available or not. And some applications, usually it will be one application, which is the external PVWA, of course, which is hidden, but it will be available through the connector. So here, what we can do, we can invite vendor. So after clicking it, we can just put the data, a couple of parameters in the forms, like what is the name of the company, the first name, last name. I use the easiest last name of Polish, like Grzegorz Brzęczysz-Szykiewicz, company email address, some phone number, and here, more technical parameters like if every time I would like to approve this request or if they should be automatic, from what time to what time this person should have an access to, if this person should be able to invite different vendors, what name will be used to set up the connection in the vault, like I have some account like Grzegorz B in the vault, and that's it. It was a second, yeah? And now let's go into George environment. He received an email. If you would like to join this EMEA SE East environment, if yes, go to the link. And as you see now, I will just move with a different mirroring device. Now it's also the iPhone. And first of all, what we should do, we should register the mobile device. I have already downloaded it, but it was not initialized yet. So we need to open the Alero application, the mobile application. There is notification if the push should be available. Is the older iPhone, so here is the Touch ID, not the face recognition. I put my phone number, and after putting it, the SMS code is sent to the phone number. So now you see this one-time code, which is generated. I'm creating new account. So here I should put the first name and last name of the user who was registered already by the second person, by Bartek. And basically that's it. After typing next, there is some option like scan your face, put the picture basically, and create the PIN code, which is not needed for everyday basis, is just for the reactivation of an account. There is a question about the camera access, and as you see, I'm scanning the QR code, identifying the fingerprint, and I'm registered. It was very easy, yeah, by third-party vendor to being registered. Now, every time he or she would like to join to the environment, he needs to log in into the environment, click the application, and now what is happening is very important, that the encrypted tunnel is set up through the proxy. You see here, this Alero IO is still the cloud, because we need to use this. It's not permanent connection, but the outbound connection from the connector to the cloud. And we are getting with the same language into the PVWA. So basically Alero here, Alero service is the identity provider, and PVWA is the service provider. So we are using the SAML authentication. And on the right side, you see I'm logged in really as the George B. And after being authenticated, I can just specify, it's typical Core PAS use case now. So if I mentioned that the domain controller, I can just use some applications with the DC connection, like RDP session, and I'm establishing the new session. What is really needed here, I mentioned to you that we need to install 2 applications in the controller, in the connector service. One is really the connector, but the second one, which is highly recommended, is the HTML5 gateway before the proxy, the PSM proxy. It makes sense because we don't want to open the RDP session outside. So if we have this HTML5 gateway, it means that the RDP session to the PSM will be encapsulated in HTML5 and sent with the SSL with port 443. So it may be used with this Alero connector. So as you see, now new browser is open here, which is in this Guacamole server with the HTML5 gateway. And inside, there is RDP session encapsulated. We can easily get into the environment. Through the PSM, we are now on the domain controller. Secret for this xadmin user was sent from the vault to the PSM, as we do usually, but I have all of the features available for the PSM. Like if I did something wrong, my session may be suspended, it will be indexed, you can join the session, you can monitor the session, you can record the session, search for these sessions. You will have security incidents. If I'm now the mic user who is the security auditor, I can just get into the dashboard for the security events can see that there is some suspicious activity by user George B, who is the external user. He established the session with xadmin and opened some bad application which is not available, which shouldn't be available. If I click resume, the session is resumed. But in the end, what I can do, I can join the session if I like to, so I can get into the active sessions, see that risk score is quite high. Ooh, so maybe it's better to monitor this session. You can check with the indexing why this session was classified as the risky because of this application which is open. So we can join the session. We can join it passively, actively. So it's the typical Core PAS use case here, which we don't want to cover a lot today. But it's very important that we can, all of the time, you can react, like terminate the session of this user if you see that he's doing still something wrong. So you can terminate the session. The recording will be moved to the vault, so it will be encrypted. No one can change the recording in the vault. We are using the hierarchical keys encryption in the vault. But in the end, as the security auditor, you can watch the recordings. So all of the recordings are indexed. You can just search for particular event. You can watch the recording, and so it's fully functional system, not only from the securing the connection through the internet, authenticating the user, identifying, authenticating and authorizing the user, but also then you will have the full accountability. I think it cannot be better just to protect and react into the security incidents than using both Alero and Core PAS. From the, let's say, more technical perspective, how it is working, we will then go to the into the licensing more and the sales part. I will explain then the POC, how we are covering the POC. We will do some sales part related to QA, and you can call it a day. So from the architecture point of view, as I mentioned, the Alero is in AWS. The traffic is through the HTTPS. And basically, this HTTPS traffic finishes in the PVWA and in the HTML5 gateway. So in front, we need to have the Alero connector, which is establishing the session through the 443 port with the SSL, and inside there is also SSH tunnel. So it's the two layers of the security connection between the Alero connector and the Alero service in the cloud. The traffic is in the SSL in the Alero connector. Then it's tunneled into the HTML5 gateway. There is the SSL certificate trust between the Alero connector and the gateway. And then the gateway is sending the message with a clear RDP session. And on the PSM, you may run some protocol like SQL, FTP, or browser, or anything else to the protected devices. So that's the architecture. Usually during POCs, we are installing to optimize the amount of servers used for the POC. We are covering both Alero connector and HTML5 gateway on the same Ubuntu machine. It's incredibly easy to install, believe me. We will do the first POCs together with you. I can do it on my own. We now have a couple of POCs in the same time. And about the POC, how it is working is very simple. You just need to let me know about the POC you plan with the customer or the prospect. We define the date for the installation of the connector, because that's the one part which needs to be installed on-prem. And I'm sending to you the typical requirements for the operating system for ports which should be open from the connector to the cloud, like to Alero service, for instance. We require usually at least two mobile devices for test purposes, one for the vendor side and second one for customer side. And usually the installation, as I mentioned, takes something like 1 up to 2 hours with both HTML5 gateway and Alero connector. So I just require to customer, to you, to prospect to set up, to install the Ubuntu server, not the workstation, but the server in this version for 18.04. Check if there is the connectivity. If yes, we can do it everything on during the session, because it's just installing the Docker, downloading 2 images, create some certificate, run these images on the Docker as the container, and basically that's it. Rest is on the PVWA side. It's really, really easy. From the licensing point of view, the Alero is in this pillar of core privileged access security part of CyberArk. Of course, this is the additional license. I would say this is something like the single sign-on, encryption, and provisioning for accessing the PVWA. Its license is the subscription license, and it's license based on amount of people from the third-party vendors who will have an access to the environment in the PVWA. So it's not the concurrent connections, it's the amount of registered users in Alero service. So if there is some vendor who is having the 5 employees, 1 left, so you can just delete or deactivate this account in the Alero cloud, and you will have 4 licenses active, and you will have 1 more to be utilized. Alero service, Alero subscription may be bought into the existing environment if customer does have the license for external contractors, like the external users of the Core PAS or internal users, and would like to utilize these licenses. Then it's much cheaper. So we are just buying this license, or if this is the new prospect, new project, so we may put the bundle of Alero with external license for vendors in the same package as the subscription. Is the annual subscriptions which you may renew. So that's how it is working from them. From the licensing perspective, one more thing before we will go into the summary and the QA session. I'm pretty sure, I hope that there should be a lot of questions related to Alero. So what questions we should ask to our customers and prospects if we are talking about Alero? So first of all, so obvious questions like what technologies you currently use to get access to the environment. If you're using VPNs, multi-factor, how about the situations with the turnover rates? How often the employees are changing on the vendor sides? If you have any problems here, how you cover the monitoring, auditing, accountability, basically, for these non-employees, like these third-party vendors. Do you already have the Core PAS solution? If yes, we can optimize not only from the technical side, but also from the licensing and cost side. Maybe we can optimize this approach, because for many customers it wouldn't be acceptable to use all of the solutions like VPNs, RDS cows in local CyberArk licenses. Maybe we are able to optimize this from the cost perspective. What is very important here, what Alero is not, for sure, is not a replacement for the single sign-on. Generally, as I mentioned before, our target with the Alero is to address the third-party vendor access, not the employees or contractors access. So if customer do have the single sign-on like Okta for everything, there are plenty of applications, there is some privileged access, not privileged access. So we are not the competition for non-privileged access. We are not the competition for VPNs, which are used by employees to get to network traffic, to the network shares, etc. It's not this target. The main goal for us is to provide the secure access to PVWA and everything which is in the PVWA for third-party vendors. So it makes sense to have an access to some SQL, to the users and computers in the domain controller, to patch something in the domain controller, etc., etc. So this is the target for Alero. It's also not a replacement for MFA for local users, but for sure it may be the replacement for MFA for external users, because also MFA may be very expensive, and here you have everything in one license. So as the Alero key features, just to summarize, as you've seen already, there is no agent required on the endpoint. I think it's cool because we have the zero trust purpose, zero trust approach for remote vendors, without sharing password, with biometric authentication, with just-in-time provisioning in 2 minutes, not 2 days, and in the same time, with very small price, you will have the full visibility, reaction, remediation to any attacks based on the Core PAS technology, which is already there. So that's the purpose, that's the approach, and I think it's really working based on the feedback which we do have from the customers and prospect sides. So now let's before we will go into the QA part, just 2 more notes. One which I already mentioned. If you have any questions, you would like to schedule the session with customers, prospect, just let us know. For sure, we'll help you with pleasure with the first presentations, demoing. We don't have only the video, but a full demo environment setup, which is available. Also, if you would like to demo it on your own, I have very cool application which was created by us. I will show it to you now, which is called Click-Through Demo. It's the HTML based, but it's fully functional demo. So you can just put it on the full screen, and you know, the feeling of the interface is very cool. So again, there is the mirroring of the application. You can just click into it, just click, type some phone number, simulate the typical demo. Yeah, so you can just put this SMS code here. For instance, you will be redirected. You can specify something for the demo. Type some code here. Is the registration process, and now you can simulate situation about receiving an email by the vendor. Click the link, you will have the QR code, scan the QR code. You know, it's the full story, not only from the vendor perspective, but you can move also from the registration perspective, from the customer perspective. Fully functional, and for first demos, I think very cool. Also, from time to time, if I don't have the internet access, I'm using it or using the video. So this is the first part, which of course we can share with you, is this click-through demo. About the POCs, also, as I mentioned, let us know in advance for sure. Give us at least 2 weeks to build the calendar properly for the POC, and we can start it. I think it's the easiest POC from CyberArk perspective. Of course, if we assume there is a core pass already on the customer side. So what do we need is just this one Ubuntu server, one session, establish the environment, establish the connection between the connector and the Alero service, and then you can test it on your own, and customer can test it on his own. It's very, very easy to be tested and very effective. What is important here? The assumption by us and the limitation is that all of us, we should focus on projects with at least 50 users of Alero. That's the target. 50 or more, of course, not less than 50. If there is less than 50, from the license point of view, customer needs to buy at least 50. That's the purpose for now for the Alero. Of course, if there is some specific situation, some critical customer, you know that they will buy now 40, but in the end 2,000. Let us know, but we need the internal approvals for it. So by the policy, we should focus on the customers with the 50 remote vendors or more, which I guess shouldn't be a problem for customers who really are counting on such solutions. So in many cases, there is a lot of people, external people who are accessing the environment, and for them, we should propose such solution. So I think that's it from my side. And now I think is the great time for the QA session. So I would like to ask this magic question. Do you have any questions, any doubts? If it makes sense for you, if you have any comments about it, is the proper time. So you can either ask them or chat, or I think it's even better if you can just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Коллеги, вопросы? Бартаку.
Pardon? Can you repeat this?
Bartosz, it's me. I'm asking my colleagues in Russian.
Okay, sorry.
Any questions?
Yeah, okay, sure, sorry.
Коллеги, можете написать в чат, ну или сказать голосом так. Вижу вопрос в чате. Does that mean that customers should have at least 50 external PPL from vendor side that are maintaining them?
Yes, exactly. That's the point. So usually, if it's less, first of all, from your side, I would say the solution is pretty cheap. So to be involved, I think it makes sense to cover 50 or more. Also, from customer side, if they do have the core pass, I think it's in most cases it's not the limitation. I think it's quite standard. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in many cases, from one vendor to be around 10. So I think it shouldn't be a problem. But yet, that's the point. The target is 50 or more. as I mentioned, if there is less and you see the huge value of the project to be involved because of something, let us know and we will, let's say, proceed it internally. Yeah, but in generally speaking, that's the target, 50 or more external people from different vendors. Not from the one vendor, but when you sum all of the vendor employees, it should be 50 or more. That's correct. Thank you, Ivan, for the question. Any other questions?
Okay, Bartosz, thank you. I think if our colleagues have any additional questions, they will ask me directly by email or by phone. And I will
Алексей, я прошу прощения, одну минуту, извините. Там еще один вопрос в комментариях.
Yeah, I see one more question in comments. Could we install Alero connector on the same server with the HTML5 gateway?
Yeah, especially for the POC purposes, we are doing it all of the time. From the production perspective, I also don't see any limitations here. It's just about the considering the performance. If this HTML5 gateway will be used only externally or also internally, so you can just decide which direction you'd like to go. Because the HTML5 gateway is also very cool, where you have even internal employees and they are using some, I don't know, Linux, macOS operating systems, and they would like to establish the session through the PSM. So then they are confused because they get the RDP file and they don't know what to do with it. So either they need to install some new application on this system, which is supported by Mac or Linux, or they can use just HTML5 gateway and don't care because they are just opening the new browser window and that's it. So yeah, both options are fine here.
Okay, thank you.
Also, as I mentioned, for sure there should be some questions about the architecture. So I will give me a second. Where is it? I will share with you that the not only this presentation, but also some document which is called Alero Security. And there is very nice explanation what protocols are used, what algorithms are used, that there is this Let's Encrypt method, which makes the tunnel end-to-end between the mobile device and the connector. About the mobile application, what do we use? That we use this TE of Android, this trusted execution environment, or the secure enclave in the iOS. So basically, this is something which you can present to customer and convince them that really in the cloud there is nothing private, like the authentication, accountability, etc. It's not there basically. It's just the, I would say, the approach to make it happen in the secure way to customer environment, but very secure from the cloud perspective. So there is this full architecture explained deeply with the Alero Cloud, what is inside this engine, this reverse proxy with the SSH tunnel encrypted in the SSL to make it easier. What is internal? I think is very important to share this data. It's public, so you can share it to customer just to convince them to the cloud.
Okay, great. Please send me this document because we don't have it yet.
Yeah, I will send the package to you with the presentation and also.
Okay, and I will send it to all participants. And please pay attention to the interesting question from Vasily. How we can install Alero connector and HTML5 gateway on the same machine with Ubuntu server if HTML5 gateway needs to be installed on Red Hat or CentOS only?
I don't see this question actually. It's good. I see two questions, but okay, how we can install it? It's very easy. So actually, for now, I highly recommend to use Ubuntu because it's working, immediately. We have we have done the POC one on the CentOS and one on Red Hat. It was a little bit more difficult, but I would say in the end it will be supported. Now what I would highly recommend is to focus on Ubuntu, at least for the POCs. For the production, you will be able to use Red Hat. It is working, but if you want the POC to be smooth and transparent, I would highly recommend to use the Ubuntu because it's very easy. It's very well documented. We are now working on the full documentation. It should be closed in around 1 week or 2 weeks for the Linux, Red Hat, and CentOS to be available. So for now, I would my advice and answer would be, let's focus on Ubuntu about the POCs, but in the end, other operating systems are also supported.
Mm-hmm. I think it's not a big problem to install Docker into Red Hat or CentOS and install Alero connector and on the same machine with HTML5 gateway.
Yeah.
And another question. If we have zero trust approach, how can we trust the third-party workstation without any agent? How can we be sure that there is no malware and so on?
Yeah, so basically, if there is malware on the endpoint station, okay, so zero trust means that we are authenticating properly the person who is getting access, and we are doing it based on the biometry. This is what we cover as the zero trust. About the agent, so actually with agent or without agent, I think is just the same trust here, but the zero trust means two things. First of all, about the authentication, when you compare the shared password with the biometry, I think this is the first value. And second value, if you think there may be the malware on the station, and it can compromise the user session and join the session and do something bad. So we are getting into a typical Core PAS story. The first value is that you limit the access of this user only to PVWA and the PSM. I think this is the huge value. With the HTTPS, nothing else. So you can limit the file transfer, copy paste, etc. It will be just not available for the third party, because we highly recommend to use dedicated solutions for it, which are called the sensitive information management, with versioning, with ICAP integration, so on, so on. So this is the first step. Secondly, there is no secret, the privileged secret on the endpoint of the third-party vendor, like it was before. Yeah, to get access to the jump server, SQL, or anything else, it was needed to use the privileged account with the privileged secret. These are stored in the vault and are isolated. So you may isolate the session. You can use the PTA for analyzing some bad behavior of the user, opening new applications. So if there is any malware and is doing something bad, like creating the backdoor account or something else, we'll just detect it and respond with the remediation techniques, based on the PTA. So I think this is the next value. The first is the isolation, as we do generally with the Core PAS. So now we extend it to the remote sessions, which are encrypted and secure. You can join the session and you have this least privilege approach based on the PTA, based on the connection components which you provide to the particular users, and other layers which you probably know already from the Core PAS solution. Are there any other questions?
No questions. I see no questions in our chat. So, okay, thank you. Looks like no questions so far, but be sure that I will forward to you all questions if I get about the solution. So, thank you, Bartosz. Спасибо всем участникам, что нашли время, к нам присоединились, послушали. Вот давайте будем на связи. Если возникли какие-то дополнительные вопросы, мне пишите. Вот я пакетом информации от Бартоша со всеми поделюсь, со всеми участниками. Так что давайте работать. Всем хорошей рабочей недели.
Thank you very much for your time. Спасибо. Let's make it happen. Let me know if anything is needed. I will, of course, share with you the information. Thank you, and have a great day.
Yeah, the same to you, Bartosz. Bye.
Bye-bye.